Caitlin Ryan, and I'm a board member here at the Cannabis Alliance, and am chair of our content committee, which is providing educational opportunities like this. Here at the Cannabis Alliance, we are dedicated to the advancement of a vital, ethical, equitable, and sustainable cannabis industry. And that serves our industry members as well as our community. And we are just delighted Headset is a member, and what a valuable member to have. We love having data nerds come and share with us what's going on. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Steph and Joe from Headset and let you two take it away.
Thank you, Caitlin. It is so great to be here today and to have all of you here with us. It's good to see some familiar names and faces too. My name is Steph, and many of you already probably recognize me from in-person events and other calls and webinars like this one. Today, I am extra excited though, because I have my colleague Joe Cullen with me. And Joe and I actually started on the same day at Headset almost 4 years ago, and we had a couple of very different pathways to get where we are today. If you want to give a quick hi, Joe.
Hey everyone, happy to be here.
So in the last 4 years, I've worked in a few different sales roles at Headset, and now I currently manage the sales team in both the US and Canada. While legalization progresses, so does Headset's footprint and clientele. And I've been able to work with operators in almost all places that have legal cannabis up to this point in North America, and even a few on different continents that are looking to North America for what they should be doing. So each market is unique, and there are things to learn from all of them, both good and bad in my experience. So today I'd like to bring some perspective on what everybody could learn from Washington State, which is approaching the 10th anniversary of legalization this year in December, though the 10th anniversary of the first sale won't be till the year following. Joe, you had an interesting career path as well, even just since you got to Headset. Do you want to give everybody a quick background?
Yeah, I've had kind of an unconventional road to cannabis. Before Headset, I worked in public health for the Centers for Disease Control. And then I pivoted to education. I taught 7th and 8th grade science, and now I'm at Headset. And like Steph mentioned, we've been with the company for almost 4 years now. For my first 3 years, I started out in a customer-facing role as a customer success manager. You may know me from that, but more recently moved over to the marketing team as a product marketing manager, and that's me. Steph, do you want to lay out the agenda for today?
Yeah, sounds good. I'm sure everybody's all waiting in anticipation for everything that's coming next. So let's get to it. After we give you a quick overview of Headset and what we do, we'll take a look at some general market trends from 2022. And then we're going to dig into Washington specifically. There is some good news, even though the market is technically down year over year. And then we're also going to share something that has been unique to Washington, where both retailers and brands are sharing data with each other to make smarter decisions. And this is really helping with difficulties of the industry where every dollar really counts right now. The specific Headset tool that facilitates this is called Headset Bridge. So we'll talk a little bit about that and then open up for Q&A. So let's get into the overview. This is because we want to make sure everybody knows where the information is coming from for the rest of the presentation. So Headset was founded almost 8 years ago. Cy, Scott, and Brian, who were the original founders of Leafly back in 2010, saw operators without federal support and a nascent industry needing answers. So Headset has been tracking and analyzing these ever-evolving consumer trends since 2015, and we've done that by way of 3 core solutions. The first solution is Insights. That is our market intelligence product that provides real-time access into market-level data. We now serve 15 markets across the US and Canada. When I started, I think it was 2. So we've had a lot of growth in the Insights area. The second solution we offer is Bridge. Bridge is a tool that enables retailers to directly share sales and inventory data with their vendors to facilitate a more collaborative relationship. This is modeled off a common retail practice called VMI, or Vendor Managed Inventory, And we'll tell you a little bit more about that one later. And then lastly, retailer. This is a business intelligence tool designed for cannabis retailers to better understand their customers and main revenue drivers. Most Washington retailers are using Headset Retailer, and we have over 3,000 total connections in North America. I think the next slide shows a map of where we have retail connections, and that also means that Bridge is available everywhere, basically, that there is legal cannabis. The next slide, we're going to briefly touch on the methodology for how we source and forecast the market data part, because we're going to be using that throughout our presentation, and I know there may be some questions in that area. So this visual outlines our methodology. The first step of the data process is sourcing that data at the dispensary level. So we collect data from participating retailers through their POS system, and then we aggregate and anonymize or strip the data of identifiable information. And then we standardize it through a combination of computer robots and humans that ensure data quality. And then lastly, we take a sampling of that data set and we apply inferential statistics to create a market estimate. So I mentioned 15 total markets. We're working on getting a couple more live as we speak. I think the next slide highlights where we have insights reads in North America.
All right, so let's get into the meaty stuff. I'm going to kind of set the stage by talking about the state of the industry and where we are today. Excuse me. So looking at the markets from a macro perspective, the US and Canada are seeing growth in the markets as a whole. If we look at where cannabis sits relative to other major industries like beer, wine, natural supplements, you can see that we are closely approaching those markets in terms of total annual sales. And in fact, fun little fact, if the cannabis industry were its own country, it would have a GDP larger than over 120 countries. And this is under strict regulation and federal prohibition. So just imagine what the next 10 years of growth will look like once these market barriers are lifted. This past year was obviously a pretty turbulent time for our national and global economy. And though cannabis has shown to be more recession-proof than other industries, we've definitely seen a reversal in the positive and somewhat unusual growth that we experienced during the COVID boom in 2020 and 2021. As seen on the top graph here from a Headset industry report, you'll notice that last year in legacy markets, demand softened compared to the previous years. But if we look back a bit further, we can still see that total sales this year are on track to outperform 2019. So the market over the long haul has grown. We're just defining this recent softening as a market correction. And it's important to understand that context when we talk about pricing compression. So this market correction, among many other variables like increased competition, has created an excess in supply. And as a consequence of that imbalance of supply and demand, prices have been dropping across all markets, including Washington, which is just not on this graph because it's less severe than these other markets highlighted. Across all US markets combined, as seen in the graph here, the EQ price, or the equivalized price of flower, that's the price per gram, it's dropped by 32% since January of 2021, so about 2 years. And flower is very indicative of what's happening market-wide, so that's why we're just focused on that category. In Canada, the equivalized price of flower has dropped about 23% over that same time frame. So now you're in a situation where you have to be that much more particular and intentional about the promotions that you run, the products that you buy, the way you manage inventory, because to reach the same sales targets as last year, for example, to keep growing your business, you're going to have to sell that much more product. Steph, do you want to talk about some Washington-specific market trends?
I will, yeah. And I know a lot of people are here to talk about some of the, what's going wrong, but there are 4 different categories where we saw growth in Washington. So this is sales by month in Washington for 2022. Most markets weren't down more than 10%. Michigan actually saw a lot of growth, even with the insane pricing compression that you saw on one of Joe's slides. And in Washington, we did see a negative growth of about 12% year over year. But the categories that are growing are vapor pen, edible, beverage, and capsule. So I have a slide on each of these except for capsule, where I just have a small nod to a brand in the state. But let's talk about the vape pen category. So within the vapor pen category, we break those into a few different segments, but the 2 main contributors are cartridges and all-in-one disposables. The cartridge segment of vapor pens only grew 2% year over year, but the disposable segment grew more than 85%. And if you notice partway through the year there, I think it's in June, you'll see the sales and market share start to uptick right around that time. And this isn't responsible for all of the growth in the all-in-one disposable area, but both M-Fused and Sticky Frog launched 1 gram disposable vape pens. And that had a huge impact on this segment of the vapor pen category. That is trending in a positive direction in most markets that we cover. And I'll actually give a shout out to Massachusetts, because the #1 non-house branded vapor pen that sells there is a 0.5 gram disposable pen. I don't spend enough time in Massachusetts to know what this strain stands for, but it's called Mass Whole Mango. And it does really well there. And we haven't ever really seen a disposable be the leading product in the vapor pen category anywhere until now. So looking at all of this, I have to wonder if anybody noticed this in real-time data. So Washington is leading North America with VMI connections, but we still see a lot of operators not leaning into operational analytics for production and living on just going by a gut feeling. So there is information out there to help pivot and make decisions as competition is doing different things. Now let's talk about the edible category. So Wild showed up in Washington last year. You can see from January, where they had almost no sales, they are now the top edibles brand in Washington. This is a graph of the top 10 edibles brands that I pulled for the entire year, and then I graphed them over time. And you can see the majority of them are stable and still growing as well. So it's not just Wild contributing to the edibles growth. That seems to be a trend in a similar direction. And Wild isn't the only large established brand entering Washington. So there's a lot of smart operators that have brand loyalty, some guerrilla tactics, and they know what they're doing. So I'll call out too, though, there are 2 brands on here, Mr. Moxie's and Journeyman, that belong to Botanica. And Joe's going to talk about Botanica a little bit later. So I wanted to shout them out as seeing positive growth this year too. And you'll notice the uptick in December. Edibles are known for selling around the holidays. So that is also had a bit of an impact at the end of the year there. Beverages, there's a ton of white space in Washington. 3 brands make up 85% of the beverage market in the last 12 complete months. Ray's Lemonade alone has over 50% of sales and unit share. And then Major is that second bar that doesn't have a name between Ray's Lemonade and Green Revolution. Major has about 23% of the market for sales, and Green Revolution sitting at just under 10. So those are the 3 brands. Beverages are a huge category in other markets. There's a lot more brand saturation happening other places. And there's a lot of white space in Washington for this category to continue to handle people coming to market or introducing products that are going to sell. So I say this is all about Pareto. The Pareto principle, I'm kind of generalizing it in this slide. Pareto dictates that most of your output comes from a small amount of input. So few brands make up all the sales. Joe will tell you a little bit more about Pareto later. But I was really surprised to see that there are still only, well, 1-2 brands with a huge bulk of beverage sales here in Washington. I also wanted to shout out, there's not a slide for this, but capsules. Fairwinds is the only brand in Washington with a suppository product. And 60% of suppository sales are to a feminine relief product in 2022. So the suppository segment of the capsule category is another area that's growing, not just in Washington. And right now there's only one brand that's doing that. So I did want to point that out as well.
Steph, when you say like that there's white space in the market, can you just explain for listeners who may not know what that term means?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you think about a market being divided up into slices of a pie, and you've got a pie and everybody can have a piece of it. So generally you're going to go either take a piece of pie from somebody else, but maybe there's a whole nother pie that nobody has even attacked yet. So the white space would be if they're like a lemonade brand is the #1 selling beverage. We're not seeing a lot of these seltzer or carbonated drinks show up here yet that have lower calories. Basically just the products don't exist in those form factors yet for people to buy. So you're not really competing with what's already in the market. You're creating something completely new with which to pull revenue from.
Sweet.
Maybe the pie analogy wasn't the best one. I didn't have
No, that was a great analogy. I like that. All right, so we've talked about some of the positive trends in the Washington market, looking at categories that are growing, but let's take a look at some of the challenges. All right, so one of the biggest challenges, and one that at face value may not seem like a challenge, is just the number of products in Washington stores. You can see in this graph that an average retailer carries 1,600 distinct products. And I think that's more than an average Trader Joe's. I think that's the data point or the analogy that we always reference when talking about the Washington market. But that's a lot of product. And you can imagine that with so much product, inventory management becomes quite challenging. And so in markets like Washington, we see that almost 20% of a store's inventory is stale. And that's not solely a function of how many products the store carries, but you can imagine that's probably one of the leading factors. And to clarify, we are defining stale inventory as products that haven't sold within 60 days. So the sheer volume of products on a retailer's shelf also creates kind of an imbalance in the Pareto principle, which Steph just mentioned earlier, and you may have also heard us talk about in previous webinars or industry reports. We love the Pareto principle. But what that principle theorizes is that typically in any situation, 80% of your output comes from 20% of your input. So 20% of customers drive 80% of revenue, 20% of brands make up 80% of sales, and so forth. And so we hope to see that same distribution in cannabis retail. But in Washington, you can see that right down here, the fifth from the bottom, almost 40% of products make up 80% of sales. So if we reframe this, the Pareto principle would say that if I have 10 products, 2 of those will make up 80% of my sales. But in Washington, 4 of those 10 products make up 80%. So now we're in a situation where we have to be that much more diligent about how we manage inventory, because we have to ensure that 4, not just 2 products are consistently fresh and in stock and available for consumers. Otherwise, we're likely losing out on big revenue opportunities. Steph, how are operators responding?
So this is where we're going to talk about Headset Bridge for a little bit. The first instance, we can kick to the next slide, Joe. The first instance of Bridge I'll talk about very briefly is called Bridge Signal. This has nothing to do with data sharing or vendor managed inventory. Signal is a separate instance based on live menu data that shows you where your brand is listed and not listed on retail menus, what they are priced at, and when they are removed or changed in any way. So this is a sales enablement tool for brands and a competitive analysis tool for retailers, where all menus in the state are available in one set of dashboards that update multiple times a day. Where we're going to spend a little more time, though, is talking about Bridge VMI. This is something that I have loved for the entire 4 years I've been at Headset, and I am so happy that other markets other than Washington are starting to catch on to this magical thing called vendor managed inventory. So think of the way Coke sells to Safeway. Coke is in charge of suggesting orders, stocking, removing stale products, and generally taking care of the demand planning for their brand across a large footprint of Safeways. So Washington's a pretty unique market in this way because there are 264 stores. Next slide, Joe. Got 264 retailers sharing data with 63 brands that make up over 5,000 connections. And a lot of operators in other areas have previously been afraid of data sharing when this is totally normal in mature industries. So I will give a quick shout out to California, where now we have well over 100 retailers actively sharing data. And actually New York, where there was just one open store, soon to be two. And both of those stores are already considered auto connect. And what that means is that they will share data with any brand that wants to lean into this more transparent way of partnering and suggesting orders. Honorable mentions also go to Colorado, Missouri, and Michigan, where we have certain operators very leaned in to their retailer and brand partner connections. The average retailer in Washington that is connected to Bridge sees almost 20% fewer stockouts, an increase in $131,000 in revenue, and 6 hours saving time per week dealing with those orders coming in over the phone or just managing that in general. And another reason operators lean into Headset Bridge for this is our tech stack and our support. So this is something that can be something that's difficult to manage and run internally. And we already have the infrastructure built and the know-how to the process. And our support team answers live chats during business hours in less than 20 seconds. So we've got it all built and there's a lot of people already using it. We're seeing more adoption. And there's probably even some people on this call that know Emily from the chat bubble I just mentioned. So we've got a great team to help out and support. And we just wanted to share this with everyone. So I'm going to pass it back over to Joe for some real stories of organizations that are using this.
Yeah. So I've had the pleasure of interviewing some customers of ours to talk about their experience using Bridge VMI, and the interviews are on our website as blog posts if you're interested. But I think from both ends, brand and retailer, there's definitely an element of transparency that Bridge provides. When I talked with Washington-based retailer Mary Mart and Washington-based brand Botanica, you could really tell that the data is just this objective reality that both parties use to collaborate. You can see Luigi from Mary Mart, he's the buyer over there. He said, for those who aren't on Bridge, they don't have any idea where their numbers are. They're trying to find their way in the dark. And then Matthew from Botanica said it creates a level playing field. It's empirical, it is what it is, and we're able to have honest conversations with our retail partners. So there's this feeling of transparency, but there's also a sense of trust that it helps build. And it's not to say that trust can't be broken, but the retailer always has power to sever the connection, to accept or not to accept purchase orders. So if trust is broken, it is easy to cut off that brand if necessary. Hopefully a conversation would precede an action like that, but I just want to make it clear that the retailer always has the final say. And then another aspect of Bridge is just the fact that it helps mitigate risk, which is especially important in this financial climate. I talked to California brand Claiborne and a retailer called Kind Delivery to learn more about their partnership. And by receiving visibility into sales and inventory levels, Claiborne is actually willing to take full responsibility for inventory that doesn't move. So they'll give the retailer a credit or buy back stale product at wholesale price. And the rationale behind that is, if you're giving me this access, I'm going to do my due diligence and my part by helping you succeed, because ultimately your success is my success, right? If you stock out of product, then that's a loss on my end too as a brand. It could affect my consumer loyalty, brand loyalty. If you have stale product, you may decrease your order frequency. You may order fewer products from me as a brand, and I don't want that either. That's also a lost opportunity. So it's very much a collaborative process, and it just reinforces that it is important to work together. And that is one of our main takeaways from today, as cheesy as that may sound, work together. But our individual success in this industry is really found in our mutual success, and keeping open lines of communication with your retailer or brand partner is important to creating a consistent and reliable flow of product for your end consumer. And again, that's not to say that VMI maybe isn't going to be bumpy, or it may be slow to implement for some, but I think the really robust network of cannabis operators that has been created through Headset Bridge is just a testament to how valuable and important it is to have these collaborative relationships. And lastly, key perspective. Though the market took a dip this past year, it has been steadily growing over the long term. If you are a retailer, our free product retailer pulse actually has benchmarking analytics, so you can see how you are performing relative to the market. So maybe you've had a couple of bad weeks, but you check out our benchmarking dashboards and you see that the market also took a hit. So it just provides some additional perspective and insight. So again, that's our retailer pulse product that's free. So if you're not on that, feel free to reach out. But yeah, I think that concludes today. I know it's kind of short and sweet, about at 30 minutes now, but just want to reiterate that we have a lot of other resources available on our website: blogs, industry reports, podcasts. These are all free, available to the public. And if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. We're happy to answer them. If you are interested in becoming part of the Bridge network, feel free to reach out to us either by our personal emails. I put Steph's email there, stephwoods@headset.io, or you can reach out on our website, info@headset.io, or you can chat into Emily and Emily can hook you up. But that's it for us. If you have any, I think, let's see. I don't know how we're gonna do the chat or the questions, but
Well, yeah, I am happy to help. Let's see. Oops. I am having a hard time operating things. If you wouldn't mind, we can, let's see, I'm looking in the chat. I don't know that I see any, but we can also take live questions. Oh, we did just get one here in the chat, but if you'd like to ask a question, just go ahead and raise your hand, and I will let you, Joe, or Steph, call on whoever you'd like. But right off the bat in the chat, if the state's data are not connected, do you provide that connection?
So if the state's data are not connected, do you provide that connection? So I'm assuming you're referencing the Bridge connections. We're available in any, you can't unmute, Steph? Oh,
I know, I'm fixing that right now, Steph, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so Bridge exists in any market where we have retail connections, which is really in any recreational or medical market. But Steph, maybe like you would.
Yeah, so out of the 3,000 or so stores that are connected on Headset Retailer, that would be the basis of who could choose to use VMI. It's one of the features available to retailers that are signed up with the free version of Retailer, is that access to be able to have the more transparent relationship with their suppliers. So there's a lot of folks that at the retail level only agree to share with a certain set number of brands. And then there are some that opt into what we call auto connecting. And that means that any connection that is sent, they're going to say yes to. Did that answer your question, James? Hi. James and I know each other from university. It's been a minute.
I am curious. We actually prior had a little chat about projections. I'm not going to ask you to make a projection exactly, and but I'm kind of curious. What do you think is the most exciting as you're going through the data that you shared with us today? I already asked.
Yeah. You know, I gotta say, and this is because I look into a lot of market data for people. I get a lot of requests from prospects and customers and just folks that are trying to walk with the data before, or crawl before they walk and then run with using it. And I was kind of shocked. I saw it because I live in Washington, and I noticed my brother started having these 1 gram all of a sudden he was buying disposable vape pens. And I'm like, Paul, why are you doing this? Because it previously hadn't been as popular. And so seeing those M-Fused and Sticky Frog pens hit the market and have that much effect on sales from, you know, legacy brands where they're still creating some innovation and moving into these products, I thought that was probably the most interesting thing that I noticed when digging through, you know, we've got 49 dashboards and insights. So there was a lot to choose from. I think that was the one that was kind of shocking to me. And then when you look at the data, you go, oh no, that makes sense, you know, because I just seen the disposable one in Massachusetts. We did a webinar there a couple of months ago. Yeah, the disposable vapes. Was that an okay answer, Caitlin?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, as you know, like we titled this Trends in a Challenging Market, and I think all of us are looking for any of those hopeful indicators that that there's going to be some recovery here coming soon enough. Nate, do you want to hop in the chat? You just made a comment. You're welcome to unmute and share your thoughts.
Sure, thanks. Hey everybody, how's it going? I was just gonna say that we have a lot of really good bridge partners in retail. Almost 250 retail stores actively share their sell-through information. So we have lots of folks that are able to, you know, have a healthy amount of stores, you know, be able to see in full transparency what's happening and make sure that everything's fully stocked all the time. So I just wanted to add that too. It's a really good connection in Washington. We wish everywhere was like Washington.
Yeah, actually, I'll piggyback on that, Nate. I don't know if you were the one that signed her up, but we have a brand that is Washington brand, and their sales manager, they only have one. She lives in Nevada, and she manages about 250 store footprint remotely, successely.
Oh yeah.
Without being in the state. So just to add that. And then I see a question from Maria, how many do we have in California? We have, I believe, we just put out a campaign last week actually, and now we have well over 100 stores that are actively sharing data back. I don't know how many of those are auto connects, but there are some stores that are starting to incorporate this in their program where if you're not using this, they don't want to carry your products. So some of the larger operators are folks looking to find that top 20% or top 40% of products that they're really going to focus on to drive those numbers. They're looking to bridge VMI to be able to track those KPIs and make sure they're holding to plan.
Yeah. I'll give a moment if there are any other questions from the audience.
If anyone has questions too, or wants to reach out afterwards about specific pieces of market data, or I know we pointed out that the flower category is down. If you wanted to dig into anything more specific about that, please feel free to use my email address. And I'd be happy to reach back out and send over information or set up a call if you just want to learn more. Nate, who chimed in, works in Washington as well. He's out in Olalla. I'm sitting in West Seattle right now. So yeah, happy to be a resource for anyone, anytime.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both. As always, super informative, really, really helpful. I'm excited to hear about Bridge and can't wait to hear back next quarter on those things. This is a quarterly webinar that we do with Headset, and I want to thank you for your time and effort today with sharing all that great information. Here at the Cannabis Alliance, we are dedicated to the advancement of a vital, ethical, equitable, and sustainable cannabis industry. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks all.
Thank you guys.